It was past midnight when Bruce Lee's car pulled into the gas station on Sunset Boulevard. He'd just finished a 16-hour day on set, exhausted and aching. All he wanted was to get home. But as he waited for the attendant, he noticed something across the street that made him pause. At the bus stop sat an old man in a military jacket, and standing around him, laughing, were 4 young men in expensive clothes. What Bruce Lee did in the next 10 minutes didn't just save that veteran's dignity. It started a friendship that would last 3 years and teach Bruce Lee something about strength he'd never forget. This is the story of Frank Miller, a 75-year-old war hero who nobody remembered, until the night Bruce Lee refused to look away. Bruce Lee had been filming all day. The filming was long, technical problems, a difficult director. Around midnight, his energy was almost depleted. His gas tank was nearly empty, and so was his energy. He pulled into a gas station that was open all night. The attendant, a young man of about 19, recognized him immediately. "Oh my God, you. Just gas, please," Bruce Lee said quietly. "Normal, unleaded." While the young man filled the tank, Bruce Lee stepped outside to stretch. That's when he heard a cruel laugh from across the street. At the bus stop, 4 young men in their early 20s, dressed in designer clothes, surrounded an old man sitting on a bench. The old man wore a faded military jacket covered in patches and metal. "I'm pausing the video for a second. I work hard to produce videos for you every day, and all I ask is that you subscribe to my channel and like the video." "Look at that," one of them shouted. "A real American hero. He fought for our freedom." The mockery was intense. "Yes, so I can wait for the bus at midnight." More laughter. Gotzi sat completely motionless, his eyes downcast, his hands clasped. He looked defeated, like a man who had been through this before. Bruce Lee watched. The gas station attendant stopped working. "Those guys sometimes come around here," he whispered. "Rich kid. They always cause trouble." "Who's that old man?" "I don't know his name. He's waiting for the late bus to the veterans hospital." The young men's situation worsened. One took out his camera and took a picture. Another threw coins at the veteran's feet. "Take them. Buy yourselves a hot meal." The veteran looked up with pained eyes. "Please, I just want to catch my bus." The attendant finished speaking. $4.50, Mr. Lee." Bruce Lee paid. "Call the police if things get worse." Then he crossed the street. His steps were silent. The young men didn't notice him until he was a few meters away. Then the tallest one turned around. "Hey, who?" Recognition came. "Wait, are you Bruce Lee?" The others turned too. The relentless energy transformed into awe-inspiring astonishment. "Oh my God, you're Bruce Lee. We're huge fans. Can we take a picture?" Bruce Lee ignored them. His eyes fell on the old man. The old man looked at him, a mixture of surprise and recognition. "Sir," Bruce Lee said quietly, "may I sit next to you?" Yes, of course." Bruce Lee sat down beside him. Only then did he look at the young men. His expression was calm, but something in his eyes made them recoil. "You were having fun," Bruce Lee said. He didn't ask any question. "We were just joking," the leader said defensively. "We had no ill intention." "We had no ill intention. Are you saying that to yourself?" He looked at the money on the ground. Bruce Lee stood up. He wasn't very big, 1.70 meters tall, maybe 63 kilos. But when he moved, the young men recoiled. "What's your name?" "Chad." "Chad Morris." The others mumbled their name. "Brad." "Tyler." "Jason." "Tell me something, Chad. What are you doing here at midnight, throwing money at an old man?" "We were just driving around. We were bored." "Did you think it would be fun to mock someone who couldn't fight back?" Bruce Lee turned to the veteran. "Sir, may I ask where you served?" The veteran's voice was hoarse. "The Pacific Front. World War II. Okinawa, the Philippines, then Korea in 1951. Bruce Lee turned to them. "This man fought in 2 wars. He was dodging bullets before you were even born. He did it so that you could stand here safely tonight and mock him. We didn't know. That's the problem. You didn't know because you didn't want to know." Gotzi spoke quietly. "It's all right, son. I'm used to it." "It's all right," Bruce Lee said firmly. "And you shouldn't be used to it." He turned to Chad. "Do you have a car?" "Yes, a Corvette." "How much?" "My father bought it. Maybe $7,000. "Your father spent $7,000 on a car, and you're throwing coins at a man who dedicated years to this country. We get it. We apologize. Can we take a picture now?" "No. I don't take pictures with people who are disrespectful to others." "Do you think a celebrity should take pictures with fans even if they are disrespectful? Or should they act according to their fans' personal attitude? You can share your opinions in the comment." "That's not fair." "We apologize." "Did you apologize to him?" Gotzi shook his head. "Then apologize." Chad started to walk away. "This is nonsense. Come on, gentlemen." Bruce Lee didn't stop them, but he said loudly, "This man probably killed killed people in those wars to protect people like you. He was younger than you. He was scared. He was far from home, but he did his duty. And now he's old, probably poor, alone. And the only time anyone pays attention to him is to mock him. The four young men stopped walking. What do you want from us? I want you to see him, really see him, not as an old man, but as a human being. Bruce Lee returned to the bench and sat down beside the veteran. Sir, would you tell them your name? The veteran hesitated, then quietly said, Frank Miller. Frank Miller, Bruce Lee repeated, looking at the young men. Not an old man. Frank Miller. A man. A veteran. Someone who deserves your respect. There was a long silence. Traffic flowed down the street. A police siren sounded in the distance. The gas station attendant across the street watched nervously. Finally, Chad returned. He didn't look angry anymore. He seemed more hesitant, lost, like someone who had just realized something disturbing about himself. Mr. Miller, Chad said awkwardly. This was wrong. What we did.
I'm sorry.
Frank Miller stared at him in surprise. You don't have to apologize.
No. Ido chat interrupt.
We acted like jerk. This wasn't right. The other three returned one by one. Each mumbled an apology. Some were more sincere than others, but they were there. They were trying. Bruce Lee stood up. Mr. Miller, where are you trying to get to tonight? The VA hospital. I have an early morning appointment. The bus takes me there around 2 a.m. I can sleep in the waiting room until it opens at 6 a.m. Bruce Lee's jaw tightened again. Are you going to sleep in the waiting room? It's fine. Better than some of the places I've slept. Frank Miller smiled slightly, but it was a sad smile. Bruce Lee turned to Chad. You have the car. You're going to take Mr. Miller to the VA hospital. Right now. What? Right now, Bruce Lee repeated. There was no room for argument in his voice. Chad looked at his friend. They all looked uncomfortable. Finally, Chad nodded. Okay, yes, we can do that. Not we, said Bruce Lee. You. Just you. Your friends can find their own way home. Brad began to object. Come on, that's fair, Bruce Lee interrupted. How long has Mr. Miller been sitting here? He looked at Frank. About an hour. An hour, alone, while you four were out having fun. So now Chad gives up his fun to make sure Mr. Miller gets where he needs to go safe. Chad walked to his Corvette and opened the passenger door. Bruce Lee helped Frank Miller to his feet. The old man moved stiffly, his joints protesting. As they walked to the car, Bruce Lee said quietly, Mr. Miller, may I give you my phone number? Your phone number? Frank looked confused. I'd like to check on you. Make sure you're doing okay. You don't have to do that. I know. I want to. Bruce Lee pulled out a business card and wrote his home number on the back. He pressed it into Frank's hand. Call me, or if you don't feel comfortable calling, just keep this. Know that someone cares about what happens to you. Frank Miller's eyes filled with tears. His hand shook as he took the card. Why? He whispered. Why do you care? Bruce Lee smiled. Because everyone should care. And because my father taught me that honor means something. You served with honor. That deserves to be honored in return. Chad helped Frank into the passenger seat of the Corvette. As he walked around to the driver's side, Bruce Lee stopped him. Chad, this isn't punishment. This is an opportunity to learn something, to hear his story, to understand what sacrifice really means. Chad nodded slowly. He got in the car and drove away. The other three young men stood there awkwardly for a moment, then slunk off into the night without another word. The gas station attendant jogged across the street. Mr. Lee, wow, that was incredible. But Bruce Lee didn't feel incredible. He felt angry. Angry that a man who'd given so much could be treated so poorly. Angry that it took a celebrity intervening to make anyone care. He drove home that night thinking about Frank Miller, thinking about all the Frank Millers out there, veterans and elderly people, and anyone who'd been forgotten by a society that only valued youth and wealth and fame. 2 days later, his phone rang. It was Chad Morrison. Mr. Lee, this is Chad from the other night. I remember. I wanted you to know. I took Mr. Miller to the VA. We talked the whole way. He told me about Okinawa, about what he saw, what he did. I had no idea. I mean, I knew about the war, but I never thought about what it meant, what those guys went through. And now you do, Bruce Lee said. Yeah.
Ido.
Chad paused. He asked about you, wanted to know if you were really going to check on him. I told him you would. I will. He cried when I left, said it was the first time in 5 years anyone had treated him with kindness. Bruce Lee was quiet for a moment. 5 years. Yeah. That's really messed up, isn't it? Yes, Chad, it is. 3 days after that, Bruce Lee drove to the VA hospital. He brought food, real food, not hospital cafeteria food. Chinese takeout from his favorite restaurant. He found Frank Miller in the waiting area, exactly where Chad had left him days before. "Mr. Lee." Frank's eyes went wide. "You actually came." "I said I would." They sat together for hours. Frank told stories about the war, about friends he'd lost, about the nightmares that still came sometime, about his wife who died 10 years ago, his kids who'd moved away and didn't call anymore, the small apartment he could barely afford on his pension. Bruce Lee listened. Really listened. Not the performative listening that people do when they're waiting for their turn to talk, but genuine attention. Every story, every detail, every moment of pain or joy that Frank shared, Bruce Lee absorbed it all. When visiting hours ended, Bruce Lee stood up. "Mr. Miller, I'd like to come back, if that's okay with you." "You want to come back?" Frank couldn't believe it. "Yes, how about next Friday? Same time." And so began a friendship that neither of them expected, but both of them needed. Every Friday for the next 3 years, Bruce Lee would drive to the VA hospital. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes he brought his kid, introducing them to Frank, teaching them to respect their elders. Sometimes he just sat and listened. Frank's apartment was small, cramped, in a rough neighborhood. Bruce Lee helped him move to a better place, not paying for it entirely because Frank was too proud for that, but helping with the deposit, co-signing the lease, making it possible. He introduced Frank to his doctor friend who did a full health checkup free of charge. He made sure Frank had enough groceries, enough heat in the winter, enough fans in the summer. But more than anything material, Bruce Lee gave Frank something he'd been missing for years: dignity, respect, the feeling that he mattered. They would talk about everything. Bruce Lee would share his frustrations with Hollywood, his struggles to be taken seriously as an Asian actor, his dreams of making films that meant something. Frank would share his war stories, but also his philosophy about life, about endurance, about finding meaning in suffering. "You know what kept me alive in those wars?" Frank said one Friday afternoon. "It wasn't courage. It wasn't patriotism. It was small acts of kindness. A buddy sharing his ration. An officer who learned my name. A letter from home. Those little moments that reminded me I was human, not just a soldier. That I mattered to someone." Bruce Lee thought about that. "Is that what you wish more people understood?" "I wish people understood that everyone's fighting their own war," Frank said. "Everyone's got their battle. Some are visible like mine were, some aren't. But everyone needs to know they're not fighting alone." Those words stayed with Bruce Lee. He started incorporating them into his teaching, his philosophy, his life. It wasn't enough to be physically strong. Real strength meant showing up for people, being present, caring. In 1972, when Bruce Lee's mother died, Frank Miller came to the funeral. He wore his full dress uniform, medals polished, standing at attention as they lowered the casket into the ground. Afterward, he pulled Bruce aside. "Your mother raised a good man," Frank said simply. "So did yours," Bruce Lee replied. In 1973, Bruce Lee invited Frank to the set of Enter the Dragon. Frank sat in a director's chair with Mr. Miller written on the back, watching Bruce work. The crew treated him with respect because Bruce had made it clear Frank Miller was his guest, his friend, and anyone who disrespected him would answer to Bruce personally. During a break in filming, Bruce introduced Frank to the director. "This man taught me something important. He taught me that real fighting isn't about defeating enemies. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves." Frank shook his head. "I didn't teach you that. You already knew it." "You reminded me," Bruce Lee said. "Sometimes we forget what matters. You reminded me." In August 1973, Bruce Lee collapsed on set. Heat stroke, the doctors said initially. But it was more than that. His body was breaking down from years of pushing too hard, from injuries ignored, from the relentless pursuit of perfection. Frank Miller was one of the first people to visit him in the hospital. He sat by Bruce's bed and said, "You take care of everyone else. Who takes care of you?" "I'm fine," Bruce Lee said, but his voice was weak. "No, you're not, and that's okay. Even warriors need rest. Even the strong need help sometimes." Those were the last words Frank Miller ever said to Bruce Lee. On September 15th, 1973, Frank Miller died of a heart attack in his apartment. He was 78 years old. He died peacefully, in his sleep, in the nice apartment that Bruce had helped him get, surrounded by photos of his family and his war buddies, and one photo that sat in a place of honor on his nightstand. Bruce Lee and Frank sitting together at the VA hospital, both of them smiling. When the property manager found Frank's body, he also found a letter. It was addressed to Bruce Lee. The manager called the number on Bruce Lee's business card, now 3 years old, but still kept carefully in Frank's wallet. Linda Lee answered. She took the message, her voice shaking as she learned about Frank's death. When she told Bruce, he sat down heavily, his face going pale. "He left you a letter," Linda said gently. The letter was simple, written in Frank's shaky handwriting on plain notebook paper, but every word carried weight. "Dear Bruce, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't be sad. I lived longer than most guys from from my unit. Got to see things they never did. Got to have a friend when I thought I'd die alone. You asked me once why I never talked to my kids anymore. Truth is, they stopped calling after their mother died. Said I was too much work, too depressing. I understood. People want to be around success and happiness, not old men with war stories and nightmares. But you never made me feel like work. You made me feel like I mattered. Those Fridays we spent together, those were the best days I had in the last 20 years of my life. I don't have much to leave you. My savings are going to the VA to help other guys like me. But I want you to have my dog tag. They're in the box with this letter. Those tags kept me alive through 2 wars. Now I want them to remind you of something. The greatest fight isn't against other people. It's against indifference, against people forgetting each other, against the idea that some lives matter more than others. You fought that fight for me. You won, and I hope you keep fighting it for others. Your friend, Frank Miller. Inside the box were Frank's dog tags, his Purple Heart medal, and a photograph. The 4 young men from that night at the bus stop. On the back, written in Chad Morrison's handwriting, were these words: Mr. Miller, thank you for your service. We'll never forget. Chad, Brad, Tyler, Jason. Bruce Lee held the dog tags in his hand, feeling their weight. He would wear them for the rest of his life, hidden under his shirt close to his heart. At Frank's funeral, Bruce Lee gave the eulogy. The chapel was surprisingly full. Veterans from the VA, some nurses who'd cared for Frank, neighbors from his apartment building, and sitting in the front row, looking uncomfortable but present, were Chad Morrison and his 3 friends. Frank Miller taught me that strength isn't about how hard you can hit, Bruce Lee said, his voice steady despite his grief. It's about how you treat people when cameras aren't watching, when there's nothing in it for you, when the world has forgotten them but you refuse to. After the funeral, Chad approached Bruce Lee. He'd grown up in the 3 years since that night at the bus stop. His face had lost some of its boyish arrogance. Mr. Lee, I visited him, Mr. Miller, every month for the last 3 years. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said, about really seeing people. So I went back to the VA and asked to visit him. He became like a grandfather to me. Bruce Lee put his hand on Chad's shoulder. He told me he was proud of you. Chad's eyes filled with tears. I was such an asshole that night. You were, but then you changed. That's what mattered. Bruce Lee died less than 2 months after Frank Miller, on July 20th, 1973. He was only 32 years old. When they laid him to rest, Linda placed Frank Miller's dog tags in the casket with him. He'd want you to have them, she whispered. He'd want you to know you fought the good fight. Years later, Chad Morrison would tell the story of that night at the bus stop to his own children. He became an advocate for veterans' rights, donating time and money to VA hospitals, organizing support groups, making sure that men and women who served their country wouldn't be forgotten. I was a stupid, cruel kid, he told a reporter in 2003. But Bruce Lee showed me something. He showed me that how you treat people, especially people who can't do anything for you, that's who you really are. And Frank Miller taught me that every person has a story worth hearing. I spent 3 years learning from him. Best education I ever got. The lesson of Bruce Lee and Frank Miller isn't complicated. This: everybody you pass on the street has a history, has sacrifices, has pain, has value. The true measure of your character is how you treat people when there's no audience, no reward, no recognition. Bruce Lee could have driven past that bus stop. Most people did, but he stopped, he saw, he cared. And in doing so, he didn't just change Frank Miller's last few years. He changed Chad Morrison's life. He changed how everyone who heard this story thinks about the invisible people around them. Real strength isn't about fighting. It's about refusing to look away when someone needs you. It's about showing up even when it's inconvenient, even when there's nothing in it for you, even when the world won't applaud. That's what Bruce Lee understood. That's what Frank Miller deserved. And that's what all of us owe to each other. Be like water, adaptable, flowing, powerful, but also be like Bruce Lee that night, willing to stop, willing to see, willing to stand up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves. The world needs more people who refuse to drive past the bus stop, who refuse to let cruelty go unchallenged, who refuse to let anyone be invisible. The world needs you to see the Frank Millers all around you, and to remember that someday you might be the one sitting at the bus stop hoping someone will stop. Be that someone today, always.